Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. This is fun. Okay, so today we have a special event, and I'll start out by saying and asking everybody, did you ever have an idea about something, or like, why can't we do this, or why can't we do that? What is the reason? And it's really just a matter of getting the right people together to talk about it, to kind of make things happen, and like, you sort of don't know where to start, and so, you know, a lot of things maybe never happen that way. But you have to start with an idea, and then you have to take that idea to the next step, whatever that is. So the idea here in the Fibershed is to explore the idea of flax as a viable product in an agricultural area. Now, historically, Tony's going to tell you a lot about this. You know, flax was grown in our gardens, and people made their flax and spun it into linen cloth and made their clothes out of it. But of course, over the decades when things have moved overseas, that's completely gone away. Tony's going to tell you more about that. So, in an area of the country where flax can be grown, you know, why can't we do it? And why can't it be an alternative to the other crops that are grown here? Why can't it be used as a cover crop? There's lots of questions, so that's what we're here to talk about today. And we have, I'm going to let each of our panel members introduce themselves briefly, and then we're going to come back and have each of them tell what they're doing in this area of flax. And Caitlin, I'll start down there with Caitlin briefly. Caitlin is representing the American Farmland Trust here in Maryland, and she's going to be able to talk to Heidi, Barr, and Bill Shick of the Pennsylvania Flax Project, because they're our neighboring state. They're doing it, and we're going to hear all about what they're doing, or they're on their way to doing it. They're in the process. So, and I need to say they are a huge inspiration for us, because we're just looking at the next state going, well, they're doing it, can we do it? You know, we have over 95,000 acres of agricultural land here, so again, why not? And Tony represents a very important historical landmark in the county that has an interest in flax. So we will begin. So each of you are going to spend just a minute or two introducing yourself and what you do in your position, and briefly your interest in flax, and then we'll circle back and you can do your spiel, and then Caitlin can fire you with all the questions about how this could happen in our area, and also those of you that would be interested in growing it, and or you know, a farmer, or you have access to land or anything, hopefully this is interesting to you as well as a future possibility. So, okay, Tony Cohen.
Hi everyone, I'm Tony Cohen. I am the president of the Menare Foundation Inc, which is located at the Button Farm Living History Center in Germantown, Maryland. We're on Black Rock Road. And we're a 40-acre hands-on history farm tucked inside of 7,000-acre Seneca Creek State Park. And my interest in flax is just overall 19th century crops, how they were grown, what were done with them in the county during the time period we interpret. And I'm hoping we can grow enough flax, or get enough flax byproduct, that wonderful tow, to create clothing that our interpreters will wear based on descriptions from runaway slave notices from within a 5-mile radius of our farm that were people who wore linen on their journeys to freedom.
And I'm Heidi Barr. I am the co-founder and CEO of the Pennsylvania Flax Project. The Pennsylvania Flax Project was founded by myself and Emma DeLong, who's a diversified vegetable farmer in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. I live in Philadelphia. And we founded it in 2020 out of a desire to see a solution to the myriad of problems that synthetic textiles present. And actually, she was introduced to me by a mutual friend who thought perhaps I might make her a linen wedding dress, which I never did. Instead, we started talking about how linen is an agricultural commodity crop that has a historical significance in Pennsylvania, having been grown in Germantown, Pennsylvania. The seed was brought from from Europe with the German and Dutch settlers of that region in 1691. So we were like, well, it grows in this region. It's an existing industry overseas. Honestly, what's the barrier? Let's just get to it. We can make this happen. And that was 2020, and here we are. And I'm not going to do the whole spiel right now. I'll get back to that. I'll just say part of where we are is that we've been able to hire a team, and as part of that team, here's Shick, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Bill. I'm the director of Ag. I just started with PA Flax in May, and I've already learned so much about flax. My knowledge was pretty limited before I saw the job posting, but I had known Emma and Heidi for quite some time, just from farming circles in southeastern Pennsylvania. I have about 20 years of growing experience with vegetable farming, and farmers are used to problem solving and doing research and adapting to changes daily, weekly, and every year. And I saw flax as a really interesting kind of research subject and something to really dive deep into. And I really appreciate that. I also have an appreciation for all the research that's being done at universities and different farms and organizations, and have seen a lot of excitement around flax, and that really brings me a lot of joy seeing everyone else's excitement about it. And I just love plant and soil science and playing with toys like farm equipment and things like that, so flax is a really good fit for me.
I'm Caitlin Robinson. I live here in the Ag Reserve. I've lived here about 14 years, and before that I grew up like closer to DC in Montgomery County also. I own Sungold Flower Company, which is a small-scale flower farm and floral design studio. And so also through like my work with flowers, growing flowers, I got into natural dye. So I've been like exploring that a ton the last 3 or 4 years. And I am a quilt maker. I work a lot with linen. So I feel, I've always like kind of felt connected to linen. Like it's a very cool, living fiber. It's always a little different. It takes dye beautifully. So when Mary reached out to Amanda, American Farmland Trust, and I am also part of the Mid-Atlantic team with AFT, Mary was curious about, are there any incentives for farmers to grow this? Like, what could there be? So when Amanda told me about it, because I've worked with linen, and I really related to Mary, and I have talked to many people too, I felt like, okay, well, this is kind of cool, because I kind of have a handle on what questions farmers might have, and especially around here. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to
Thanks y'all very much. Okay, so now you know who they are, and we're going to begin. Tony's going to. Oh, I'm Mary Kingsley. I'm on the working committee / board of Chesapeake Fibershed, and I am the co-founder and co-owner of Lady Farmer, and my daughter and I run a podcast, and we've been doing it for 5 years now, called The Good Dirt. And we can talk about all these things on The Good Dirt. We've done a lot of talking about of linen and flax growing, about the different people that are experimenting with it across the country and trying to bring it back. Heidi's been on twice. Tony's been on twice. So we get all our good friends on. So anyway, look it up, The Good Dirt. And yeah, so this has been my pleasure to get this panel together, because these are things I am very curious about as I look across our landscape and I see, wow, what could happen. So, and Tony and I are friends, and I've been to farming so much, and I sort of know what's going on in his head about the possibilities for flax. We've been talking about it for years. And so, and he's a historian, a very well-known historian. There's so much about Tony that we can go into. We can spend the whole 45 minutes on him, but it's long. Look him up. So Tony, tell us about, take about 5 minutes or so to talk about the history of flax in the area and what you know and what's of interest to you, etc.
Excellent. So I'm going to read from notes, which are in 11-point font Should be 16. Yes, exactly. And this is nothing comprehensive. I'm actually hoping this winter to dive more deeply into it, but some highlights from Maryland. Linen cloth was imported from Europe as early as the 1640s in Maryland. May have been earlier than that. And continued as an import until the Revolutionary War, when domestic production was encouraged as a way to push back against British rule and tariffs. According to historian Thomas Sharp, in his 1882 History of Western Maryland, the flax industry was introduced to the state in the first quarter of the 18th century by German immigrants who were originally from the Rhineland, and then into Pennsylvania, and then down into Frederick, which at the time encompassed what we now call Montgomery County. He said large quantities of flax were grown, soil being suited for its cultivation. And he claims that men prepared it for spinning, and the women wove it into coarse linen, in which found a ready sale. And those sales were through Baltimore, Pennsylvania. It also seems that before the Revolution, Germans in this region had a connection with German immigrants in Savannah, Georgia, who were from Salzburg. And so a Maryland to Georgia trade began. And that included boots, shoes, saddles, harnesses, woolen goods, linen, and woolen and flaxseed threads, as he describes it. 1768, 1766, Maryland General Assembly passes an act for standards for packaging and shipping this. And within a decade, there were more laws, and also laws in Ireland which kind of matched ours here. So it seemed that there was some tariff, trade war, this kind of thing going, and that actually flax from here was being sent to Ireland to be grown there, and then I guess manufactured there and sent back. Yeah. In Montgomery County in the 19th century, I found at least 3 mills that processed flax for oil. One was called McFadden's Flax Mill, which was somewhere on the Montgomery district line. The Waters Mill in Germantown, what we call Germantown now is called Clarksburg District there, on Little Seneca Creek, right up the road in Black Hills Regional Park. This mill pressed flax seed to make linseed oil needed for the manufacture of paint. And Brookville near Olney, David Newland, who came down from Pennsylvania in the early 1820s, he had a mill, fulling, sawing, clover seed, flax seed production, and in 1820 he boasted $6,000 in capital in his woolen factory, 17 employees, 7,500 yards of cloth from full-blood merino sheep, 3 carding machines, 1 picker, 4 spinning machines, 4 spindles, 1 warping machines, narrow looms, 1 pull machine, 2 dressing machines, breaking machine, press, tinter, and a partridge in a pear tree. In 1850, in Montgomery County, the census, the agricultural census says 5,500 pounds of flax and 700 bushels of flax seed had been produced in the previous year. In 1910, the census records that there were no farmers growing flax or peanuts for commercial production in the county. We'll figure out what the cliff was there. And then finally, some of the more vivid descriptions of flax for domestic use in the state of Maryland come from slave narratives. Frederick Douglass, who located on Edward Lloyd's plantation on the eastern shore. Lloyd was the largest slaveholder in Maryland. I think he had 450 people enslaved in the year 1850. He clothed his enslaved people with tow linen shirts, one pair of trousers, one wool jacket. In winter, one pair of yarn stockings, and one pair of shoes. Douglas said children under the age of 10, however, received only 2 coarse linen shirts without socks, shoes, pants, or a jacket. Josiah Henson of Rockville, now in a place that they call North Bethesda, my lands, was enslaved by Isaac Riley, and he describes, he doesn't say exactly what the garments were made out of, but a single piece of coarse cloth, being like a shirt but longer, reaching down to the ankles. Other slaves received a pair of pants for men and a gown for women, a round jacket or overcoat for winter, and a wool hat every 3 years. I'm going to leave these out. It's just a few little show and tell. One is a runaway slave notice from the Waters plantation where the flax production happened. And this is for a man named Sam. And he escaped in his dress country, tow linen, and he gives a whole description there. And then a beautiful image that I got from, and then I'll shut up, that I got from Maryland Historical Society. I'm going to make a trip there and just deep dive into their collection. But this was from the Claggett Farm in Prince George's County. In their collection, they have what they describe as a flax wheel and a suit of clothes, gorgeous suit of clothes, which I wish I had. And I would look fine, And I'm going to, we can pass those around and take a peek. And that's me.
Thank you. Thank you. Amanda and I were just at
So, you get the picture, flax can be grown here very successfully, and what happened before 1910, maybe we'll hear about that. But next is Heidi. Let's take a dive into Pennsylvania Flax Project.
Yeah, what did happen in 1910? I have some ideas, but it's interesting. It's like a similar trajectory from what we know about what happened in Pennsylvania. What I love the most about what you just said is this relationship between Pennsylvania and Maryland, because here we are, right? So the flax over, the thousands of years that humanity has been collaborating with that plant makes these connections for us. And it's just an honor to be a part of that. So basically, Pennsylvania Flax Project, we decided that we were just going to do this, that flax would grow in the region and that it's an existing industry, and that really the only barrier to it was perseverance, knowledge, and money. And so Emma and I worked from 2020 to 2024, self-funded, which that's code for no money. And we planted small, we started out with 1/8 of an acre of flax for linen on her farm, seeds that we got from Landis Valley Farm and Museum in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where Joe Schott has been growing flax for decades as part of their historical preservation program. So we had the advantage of learning so much from Joe, and could not have done it without him. And so we planted 1/8 of an acre. It was beautiful. We fell in love with it. I fell hard for it. I went out to visit the field regularly. I would literally lay by the field. It's a beautiful plant. It's just so miraculous. And then we started harvesting that 1/8 of an acre by hand. And so the next year we planted less. We're like, oh, it's kind of hard. And then and a little bit less and a little bit less. But even with the less plantings, it was more learnings. We discovered people across North America who are also on this trajectory. We worked with the women out in Oregon at Fiber Revolution as consultants to sort of look at the industry of it and to consider what would it actually take to have a financially viable industry in the region. And then we looked at the business plan, we took a deep dive into that, we started with the director of development. This is all volunteer still. This is all just like, people are like, yeah, this sounds really cool, let's see if we can make it happen, we'll do it for free. And we started sort of sussing out a business model and figuring out what scale we would have to achieve in order to actually pay farmers and pay all the people that would have to get the product to market and like do what they're doing in Europe, in Belgium and northern France, or otherwise known as Flanders, where 70 to 80% of the global production of flax for linen is today. And what we determined is that we would have to produce about 4,000 acres annually and have a mill that could process that much annually to support our region, to support like a regionally scaled processing mill. And in late 2023, we decided that we wanted to be a cooperative model. And we did the paperwork, we incorporated, we're a cooperative Inc. For tax purposes, that means we're a C Corp, we're not a not-for-profit, we're a for-profit cooperative. We chose that model based on a model that exists in Europe and also just based on our ideals. It's a farmer-first model, so it's a model that allows farmers to grow a crop and realize profit at the mill, which is in the industry where most of the profit is. And so instead of buying a crop from the farmer at the lowest possible price and then having the mill try to profit off that, this way the farmer has equity in the mill and the farmer's crop goes into the mill and then they are also realizing a profit at that level. So end of 2023, we were pretty tapped out. We were like, I don't know if we can keep doing this. We don't have any money, what are we gonna do? And somebody in our circle said, you know, I've been looking at this organic market development grant from the USDA and you guys seem like a really good fit for it, you should apply. And I said, Emma was out on family leave and I said, yeah, that's the mother of all grants, I'd be writing that alone. I can't do it. And then a week later, somebody else in our circle said, you know, I've been looking at the organic market development grant from the USDA and you guys seem like a good fit, you should apply. And I was like, okay, I'm not stupid. So thank you for saying it twice, universe. I will buckle down and apply for the mother of all grants. And, you know, we got it. So, it's incredible, you know, and people say, how did you get it? I say, well, we worked for 4.5 years for free. That's one way to get it. And also we have like really, really qualified people help us write the grant for free. We're very blessed. We have a really wonderful community. The grant has allowed us to really double down and pursue the vision of a regional scale mill. So our grant funded priorities are to put 12,000 acres of flax into production in Pennsylvania, and that represents 3,000 or 4,000 acres in a 3 or 4 year rotation, depending on how we end up cutting that. And to finish our built environment strategy to locate a longline European model sketching mill in Pennsylvania, and to establish relationships with companies that will purchase the product we'll be producing at the mill. That's gonna be nice. And we're making measurable progress. So we're definitely not there yet. There's like a lot, it's a lot, but we have a really incredible team and we're making measurable progress. So before I let Bill talk about where we are in the agricultural portion of it, I just want to give a shout out to another one of our team members here, which is Janelle Wysock, who is our Director of Education, who has been bringing in like many really wonderful community partners, which is like how this is gonna occur. So, and I'll let Bill talk about where we are agriculturally at this point.
Yeah, well, tough acts to follow. I'm still really new to flax and the textile world. I'm really used to dealing with local food and food issues. I've been farming for many years for a food bank and have a lot of friends and mentors in the vegetable world. but I'm realizing how similar it is to the textile world, and people are just as passionate about textiles and fabric and fiber as they are about food. And so I see a lot of similarities in what we're trying to do here. And it's just great to be welcomed into this community. I had a very steep learning curve coming in, but I went to my first industrial hemp field day with all these fiber people there, and they just welcomed me in and made me feel at home right away. And it has just been so great to get to know everybody. So I'm really kind of see my role as every step from working with Janelle with our Square Yard project and helping homeowners and small backyard gardeners be successful growing flax, to our local CSA growing a couple hundred feet of flax. Then we're moving up the scale and looking at universities growing research plots. Then we have the next scale up from that is local farm partners growing anywhere from 1/4 acre to 1 acre to hopefully 10 acres. And then thinking big picture and several years down the road to hundreds to thousands of acres. And doing it all at the same time.
That's great.
So-
No problem.
But we have to, and it's very exciting. At every level, we have incredible partners, and it's all possible. And I enjoy all of it so much. And what has been very interesting to me is just seeing how this plant does just captivate people. And the first time I saw Heidi and Janelle doing the hand processing on Emma's farm, I was like, oh, okay, this is what it's all about. Coming from, growing and eating delicious vegetables right out of the ground, I was still kind of trying to figure out what's going on here. But then seeing something that looks like straw being turned into beautiful fiber through physical means alone, and no chemicals, no complicated equipment, at least on a small scale, I saw why it captivated so many people. And I think it really does kind of speak for itself once you start growing it, and that's why it's so important to get it in the hands of community gardens and backyard gardeners with Square Yard. The university partners we've developed very quickly are also captivated by it. They're also very excited that it doesn't take all the crazy permits that hemp takes, and there's very few roadblocks to them to start experimenting with flax. So they're very excited about it. The bigger challenge is getting larger acreage into growing and competing with our monocrop corn, soybean rotation that we're very blessed to have, honestly, to have soil that supports that kind of high production agriculture for feeding people and animals, but to have, to bring a plant or bring a crop back and compete with something that has enjoyed decades and decades of government subsidies and university research and federal research, and starting from scratch is a challenge, but farmers are always up for a challenge, and a lot of them really do like trying something new. That is what is so much fun about farming, is being able to try something new every year. So we are chipping away and finding some local growers that are interested in putting some acreage aside and just seeing what happens. And we have a local hemp entrepreneur that really wants to see what a fancy new drill can do with flax and do with hemp. And American innovation, North American innovation, in partnership with European partners, we can do this. We are very fortunate to have, when we mentioned France and Belgium being the leaders, they're growing more flax on less land than anyone else in the world. And achieving those standards and that level of productivity and perfection is a challenge, but we also have like a blueprint for it, and they've been very helpful to us so far.
I'll just add two things to this. We have established relationships with those European partners. We've visited them in August, we've met them, and they're really supportive of what we're doing, and that's gonna be really key to our success. And also, neither of us mentioned that we now have this massive harvest set that we can use to harvest flax at scale now, which we imported from Belgium, which our European partners worked with us to get used equipment. And then I learned more about international shipping of agricultural equipment than I ever hoped to know. And it has arrived on our shores, and we have now successfully translated the manuals to the point where we can actually operate it. So we're ready for harvest next season at scale, right?
Wow.
So, yeah.
And that kind of goes back to why flax production kind of mysteriously disappeared in certain points in history, because it is an extremely labor-intensive crop to harvest and then turn in the field. And so having this equipment isn't necessarily about like taking people's jobs away from them. It's just a really miserable job. Pulling it, it's dusty, it's dirty, you're bending over the entire time. So having this harvest equipment is very important. And that is something that a lot of people in the industrial hemp world are very jealous of. It took them many years to get to the point of having specialized equipment, and many hemp growers still don't have this kind of equipment, so they're very excited for us to have it. And so now the next step is getting the proper equipment for seeding at scale, and finding a way for flax to be able to compete with weeds and be successful. Part of what makes Europe such a powerhouse for flax production is they have very strict standards for how many weeds can be in the bale, and the news is it's not very many. So,
And they don't achieve that organically. It's less than 1%, significantly less than 1% of flax production in Europe is organic.
so we're working on achieving organic growing practices here, but also working with conventional farmers, because it's going to take every grower working together to get to where we want to go. And we'll get there, and we're just excited to see. We've come so far just since May, since I've started, at least I have. Things are just moving so quickly. Yeah, things are just moving so fast, and I feel like I've learned so much, and people are surprised to learn that I've only been with PA Flax since May. But I do have a lot of our partners in this, with universities especially, are studying 5 or 6 different crops at a time, and I'm just focused solely on flax. And I'm learning so much about it so quickly because I can spend 30 to 40 hours a week on it. So it's been great so far. And I really love talking shop. I love fielding questions about it. I have a lot of questions myself. We're all learning. So I'm looking forward to Q&A, both structured and unstructured later. And please reach out to me if anything comes up in the days and weeks after this event. So please feel free to reach out with any questions or resources.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bill. So now we're ready to talk shop. So
Yeah.
here's our girl from Montgomery County, American
Here's our
Farmland
girl.
Trust.
So I am struck, like immediately, like both of you talking about just how captivating like flax and linen can be. And I think like that is where it starts, right? You have to kind of be super interested, you know, on the romantic level with this thing. And then comes like the practical, the logistics, all of that. And Heidi, I heard you use the metaphor of like you're building each leg of the table while also eating off of the table. And trying not to, yeah. So, in preparing for this conversation, we kind of did like a brain dump of questions, which I attempted to organize in 3 columns of like agriculture, processing, and then the market. So I feel like the questions that people have about each of those things are like kind of all equal. Like they're all equally important, you know, questions to ask. So where should we begin? I think being here in the Ag Reserve, I think one of our biggest questions when we were talking was like, how do we get a farmer interested in this? How do we get them to be like, okay, yeah, instead of, you know, these 400 acres of corn, I'm gonna think about doing flax. So like, what is, as far as the agriculture goes, as far as the farmers, like, has that been a heavy lift to get people interested? has it been kind of natural because you did this work for 4 years without, you already were in conversation with a lot of people, but what has that been like?
I'm gonna start
Bringing
that.
Go ahead,
farmers on
yeah.
board?
I'm just gonna start it and then
Mhm.
hand it over. I just wanna say, like, at this stage, so I think the agriculture and the processing and the market, you can't answer one without the other.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the thing about this
Yeah.
puzzle.
Yeah.
Globally, the market for flax and the co-products, so long line flax fiber for fine linen, and more and more the co-products that are produced at the mill, the shive and the tow, which are going into industrial building and biocomposite markets, which is a huge growing market
Yeah.
in North America and globally. So the market is strong and growing. My experience in Europe was we visited one mill that had 5 sketching lines and was building a new building to put 5 more sketching lines in. So it's growing.
Yeah.
And so that supports these other 2 legs, right? Which is the processing. So the processing infrastructure has to get in place before you can say to a farmer, we're gonna buy your straw for X number of dollars into a mill, because we don't have a mill. So we can't really say that right now. But we can say, when we have a mill, this is what the numbers look like. And we're offering you ownership in that mill. And when that product leaves the mill, here's the number that's gonna come from it. So there's a enticement. And so I would say, like, in terms of attracting farmers to this project now, who we are looking to attract right now are early adopter farmers who are not really risk averse and who want to pursue flax for linen as part of a larger solution, right? And see a way for it to fit into their rotation in a little bit of a longer window, like 2 to 5 year window,
Yeah.
right?
And what is the rotation ideally?
In Europe, it's around 8 years, but it's mainly because they've never stopped growing flax intensively, and so they have more pest and disease pressure. Here, we anticipate at least we'll have a little bit of a grace period, and we can hopefully get away with maybe 4 years, which is more typical for like corn and soybeans and other crops, because we don't see the same pest and disease pressure yet, but we would have to be very vigilant for keeping an eye out for that.
And we have fundraised some, and I am continuing to fundraise more guaranteed minimum farmer payment for early adopter farmers, so that we can bring early adopter farmers in and not ask them to lose money, right? So, and then our strategy is to start small in the first year and scale with a farmer from there, and I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, it's some farmers are more ready, like our biggest partner farmer, and who neighbor of Emma, our co-founder, on the same piece of land, was ready to dive in for 4 acres, and next year he's ready to do 7. And farmers, I think, are ready to do even more if he's like, well, where is this going? And hearing that it's going to be shipped overseas, even if it in the beginning is what we have to do, it's less attractive to farmers. Like, they really wanted their products to stay on shore as much as possible. But I think, short of finding those very rare early adopters that are ready to throw acres into the effort, it starts off with a 1/4 acre, 1/2 acre, 1 acre, but then it doesn't make sense for our machinery to be trucked around to harvest that. And we didn't mention while our harvester is a big, beautiful machine, it takes a tractor trailer to move it, and it's a wide load on secondary roads. So you need, like, your friends driving in front and behind with their flashers on.
That's
and
my
maybe,
job.
and maybe in the middle of the night would be ideal too. So the logistics around our harvest machine is going to be complicated, and we don't, at least in the first year or 2, we don't want to be driving that all over the state. So smaller test plots are ideal for farmers, so that we can hand harvest something like a 1/4 acre or less. What else is really important for us right now that I've really have seen the value in is getting this growing at research farms that are our regional universities, so that when they have their field days in the summer, they can see, other farmers can come and see corn, soybeans, industrial hemp, flax, like all together, and they don't have to take my word for it or Heidi's word for it. their local extension agent who they know and trust can say, we're growing flax, here's our experience, here's where we see it going. And then they can have like a materials scientist or engineer from that university telling them what all the amazing products flax can go into. So I think the crop can speak for itself, but having farmer to farmer and like peer to peer relationships, like helping move this along, is going to be really important. And we have to have, what's hard these days, what's, you know, a mixed bag for me personally has been all the adoption of no-till farming locally. And I can take a wild guess just driving around any region and say that's no-till corn and soy and no-till cover crops going in, and which is a lot better for the soil than conventional farming with a lot of tillage as far as erosion is concerned. But we don't know how that will translate to flax production. The current model in Europe is traditional tillage, and so that involves disturbing the soil, and they're usually working on really pretty flat ground so that you're avoiding erosion issues. And so having a farmer that has the conventional tillage and conventional seeding equipment is kind of necessary, at least right now. We are looking at research into no-till, both conventional and organic, moving forward, because that would be the holy grail, is being able to no-till organic grow something, but at the dense seeding and very close spacing that flax requires, it's going to be a challenge. But we will be looking at how they're doing it in Europe and seeing how we can do it here.
So for your farmers who have grown, what's the most acreage that's been grown?
4 acres in one place, yeah.
So was that farmer able to use conventional equipment to seed all of that?
They used the best, so I could go on and on about seeding equipment. I've been studying it very deeply, and we can talk later if you want to.
That's another one.
That's another one. In Europe, most farmers are seeding it 4 inches apart. The rows are only 4 inches apart, and they're seeding at 100 to 120 pounds an acre. And they're using very expensive equipment to make sure that the seeds are 1 inch apart within that row. And when you're driving 5 to 7 miles an hour and trying to seed that thickly and that precisely, it's a challenge. So we are looking at different methods of seeding here to achieve those European standards. Our farmer used a drill that's at 5.5 inches, and it's locally produced by Ash Machinery in southeastern PA. We're very lucky to have that, because while it's not 4 inches, some people in Europe are doing around 5 inches. 5.5 isn't that much further apart. But we've had multiple people, including Cornell and Rodale and other places, try at 7.5, and it's just too far apart. Flax can't compete with the weeds at that spacing. Unless you're on very flat ground, you can't cultivate at 7.5 inches. That's also a challenge. You can try, but it's going to be difficult. So you can also do a crosshatch pattern, but having to drive over the field twice at half a seeding rate can be a challenge too. So long story short, he did 5.5 inches and it worked pretty well for us, but we did not like bail that and send it to Europe and see what they thought. It might look good for us, or might be fine for your own small scale production, or maybe even like a regional effort. We're trying to get to the precision of what a mill wants. And so we are researching what can work for that.
Thanks for bringing up the mill, because I want to hear about the mill and kind of what you're thinking about. How much, before last night when we talked, I didn't even have a reference point for like, what does a mill look like? How,
Right.
you know, I'm picturing old tiny, but
Yeah, so points about the mill. I just have so many thoughts about that, but that's okay.
yeah, I know. I feel
I
like
just want to, just in a nutshell, I think that attracting farmers, the transparency of this conversation is what's gonna attract farmers.
Yeah.
Because it would be foolish for us or anyone else to say that this project is not without its challenges. Like it's a lot of challenges, but we're addressing them as they come, and we're making measurable progress on all of them. And that's really exciting. And the mill is another piece of that. So the mill we're looking at, when Cindy does the flax demo and you see all of these tools over here, what you'll see are the wooden versions of exactly what happens in the mill we're talking about. So the mill we're talking about is 100% mechanical processing. There's no chemical anything in it. It's just a mechanical processing of the plant. Goes through exactly the same steps you'll see here, and with the caveat that we are going to stop at the scutching. We're not going to hackle in our mill. And that was a decision that we made after this last trip to Europe when we visited 3rd and 4th generation scutching mills, and none of them had hackling on site. And I was like, why don't you have hackling on site? Hackle fiber gets such a higher price. And they were like, well, it's its own specialty. It takes a lot of labor. Some used to have it and have discontinued it. Some never had it. And I thought, well, I'm not going to be so presumptuous to think that I can hackle if they can't, because they're in the 4th generation. So we're going to master sketching in Pennsylvania, and then maybe we'll go for hackling. So the mill is the place we're most likely to purchase equipment. Manufactures their machines all on site. Going in the door is sheets of steel and tubes of steel, and going out the door on the other end are complete machines, and their workshop is like, I could have stayed there for a year. It's so beautiful. There's so much pride in their work, and they've been manufacturing machines since 1925. And then, so they manufacture the sketching line, and it means we need 200,000 square feet, so it's a large building. It's literally a long line. Right, so you need a lot of linear space. It's not very wide, so you put in your first one, and then your business plan is in 3 years once you stabilize and start to have skilled labor that's up to speed. You put in a second line, and then our plan is then to stop and help other people implement mills of a similar size in their regions, so that what you end up with in North America would be a interconnected system of regional scale processing, flax processing lines. It's a zero waste process. So at the mill, you have 1.5 stories. Your main line is on the main story, and then you have either a sub-story or lower floor. You gravity collect all of your co-products, and you collect the dust. The dust is sold for compressible burnable bricks, or it goes into chipboard, or it's, or it becomes a brown in industrial composting. Is a big thing they're selling for in Europe right now. And then you collect the shive, which is the woody core of the plant that breaks away. The shive traditionally was used, and still is used, for animal bedding. Horse people like it a lot. It's good for horse bedding. A garden mulch, which is still used for a lot in Europe, and then also we'll probably be selling into the industrial building trades. It can go into a blow-in insulation system similar to Hempford, and also like a flax street. Are we running out of time? Yeah. Okay. And also really fast. I just a couple more things, and then the toe can go into textiles. It can be spun for textiles. It can also go into non-woven cloth. There's a lot of research being done at university level. We're partnering with Jefferson University for research on making 100% flax disposable wipes. So non-woven cloth, and then it also goes into the biocomposite markets. It's used for sound insulation, ceiling panels. It's used in car doors. It's going into skateboards, cellos, bicycle frames. It's like going everywhere now into plastic, hard plastic replacement products. Not yet, but that's next. And then the long line fibers. So part of the whole, does that kind of answer the mill questions? And you want the price tag, or do you want like how much is it going to cost to get a mill?
Yeah. Share that?
Yeah, I'm getting comfortable with you guys. So like it sounds like a big number. It used to make me really nervous, but like to actually get an operational mill in a building is going to be between $10 and $15 million. Yeah. So that number, it sounds high, but when you talk to people who are working in industry, they go, oh, okay. So, it's doable, it's achievable.
Yeah. And hearing about all those other uses, because one of my main questions when we were talking initially was like, is all this just gonna create another luxury product, like, in linen and like beautiful artisanal local linens. And I think that's a very valid concern. But hearing about all the other uses and hearing about also like the interest that the European flax industry has in North America also growing,
Right.
and as that relates to like the marketplace, I thought that was a really interesting piece too, that like the more.
Yeah, I mean, a really interesting piece of the market study right now is that, like, historically, this is a moment when Europe is actually looking for new raw material sources. Their industry is under a lot of pressure due to climate change and war in the region, and it's a difficult time for them. They had 3 subsequent years of crop loss. There's a growing demand for the product, and they recognize that if they have a relationship with the geographical regions where the industry grows, it supports all of us. So I think it's a good moment in time for flax.
Yeah.
I think, you know.
I think that's a good place to end. Obviously, we have just touched the tip of the iceberg on all the questions and the things to talk about. And I hope it's piqued some interest and curiosity and sense of possibility in this audience, and hope it'll spread like ripples on the water. And this is just the first step. And can I take 5 minutes, Lisa, to ask the questions from, I mean, I think, you know, we said we were gonna stop at noon, but I think we can take a couple of questions. And Martha, finish your question.
What is the growing period for a flax crop and compared, I thought I read somewhere that sometimes, some places you can get 2 crops a year. Is it a heavy feeder?
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on what region you're in, and that's what's really exciting about it. In the south or in more warm regions, it's grown over winter because it prefers cool weather. But where we are and moving north, it's typically planted as soon as you can work the ground in spring, like oats. And oats are kind of a good indicator crop. Like if you can grow oats successfully over winter, you can most likely grow flax over winter. But at where we are here and moving further north, it used to be a rare occurrence to grow oats and have it survive. Not anymore. So, but it is kind of a big gamble where we are now, at least currently, to put so much time and effort and especially expense and seed. We didn't even touch on seed. There's so many things to talk about.
Okay.
We're happy to talk later. So it's a big gamble right now to try to grow flax over winter where it's cold. But you try to get it in the ground as soon as you can in the spring. By the time it's finished retting in the field, it's usually mid-July, maybe August. And then that gives you time to put wheat or a cover crop in the fall. People wouldn't normally grow 2 rounds of flax in 1 year on the same soil. But it does give you a chance to double crop in the same year.
And then heavy feeder, it's a low nitrogen feeder.
Yep.
So, Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee Langstaff. Welcome to Shepherd's Farm. You can see we have fields out here that are being cropped in a more sort of commodity operation. We would love to be doing something. My question, and I've talked to the farm, we lease 100 acres out to a local farmer, multi-generation. And I've talked to him about growing hemp, I've talked to him about flax, and he said, just show me what I have to do in terms of equipment, and how big of a financial risk is it from that, they're heavily capitalized, right, in the equipment they have, so shifting equipment is a big deal. And he says, what do I do with it? Where do I take it? Where do I get the check? And then I'm interested, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, it's a kind of a chicken and egg situation here, right? So what needs to happen first? I can be talking to him, but this may be 20 years down the road. And so, am I talking to the right person? Is our current farmers the people we need to get some buzz with? Or do we need to be focusing on the young people in ag sciences at the universities and things like that, so that when they inherit the next generation, these farm operations, that they're ready to try something new? So how are you handling that sort of chicken and egg situation? Oh, it's familiar.
So I'm going to start. In Pennsylvania, our mill is audaciously 2.5 years out,
Yeah.
realistically, probably 3 years out.
Yeah.
So there will be a mill in Pennsylvania, I mean, unless everything implodes, but, you know, there will be a mill in place within 5 years in the state of Pennsylvania. There is somebody else putting some processing equipment in Pennsylvania. That's one possibility for us to sell straw into, and we are in conversation with Europeans to sell straw to Europe in the interim while we get our mill up and running. And that is not a good long-term business strategy, selling to Europe, but it's a relationship we developed with processors there. They're willing to do this for us. It's basically a favor they're willing to do us so that we can get some financial support until we get our own mill operational. So you need the chicken and the egg, right? Like, so this is there's a pace at which these things have to occur in order for the whole thing to work. And we do need farmers to start scaling next year in order to be able to feed the mill that's gonna come online in 3 years, you know? So we are, it is farmers now, like we are looking for farmers now. I think this gets back to that kind of early adopter farmer and the sweet spot of like who we're going after right now. Do you wanna speak to that more?
Yeah, we would talk to farmers on a case-by-case basis and find out what equipment they have. There are seeders, like for alfalfa, that would be suited for seeding flax. It is conventional tillage, but there are pieces of equipment around. It wasn't so long ago that more people were doing tillage, so even no-till farmers now probably still have some equipment around, or there is some available. We are trying to be very conscious of, we don't want farmers to pay for the gamble that a new crop might be. So we are finding funding to pay for their time and their overhead in the field. And then we're also trying to find support for paying for the seed, so that at a very least, they're breaking even, if not coming out ahead. If they do have a crop failure, we don't want them to take it as a loss. So that's how we would approach a farmer. We would also just ask, what equipment do you have available at your disposal? And the hard part is the harvest. For us to truck our equipment around, we're really looking for about 5 to 10 acres to justify moving our harvesting equipment.
So let me ask you just a question that I should know the answer to, and maybe Amanda knows, or maybe somebody else here knows. This is all no-till.
Mm-hmm.
I'm under the impression that that's a thing for the Chesapeake watershed.
It
That it's
is.
supposed to be no-till. So is there a maximum you can do with conventional tillage, or do we have to get a special exception? Are we allowed to till on that scale?
I
don't
would-
know.
I would say that
There's no requirement to be no-till. It's definitely
Really?
it's considered a best management practice.
Yeah.
It is not a requirement.
Okay.
It is a decision that each farmer makes individually.
Thank you. That's,
I would say that just very simplistically, just looking at a percent slope and looking at topographic maps and identifying the flattest fields for flax would be ideal to be more responsible. We're looking at more coastal areas that are flat. That's what it looks like in Europe. It's very flat. And so I am in favor of no-till on slopes. If you're going to grow on a slope, that's the ideal. But I do think it's possible where it's very flat, to try to be responsible and have if you're going to till, seeding it at the very same time, flax comes up very quickly, and if we're seeding it densely, hopefully it can control erosion.
thank you.
Yep.
Yes, because we have time for one more question. Yeah, okay.
What, you say the mill is coming in 3-ish years, how much does it need to eat for, say, one line?
It needs to eat 3,000 to 5,000 acres of straw.
That's what,
Yeah,
so a lot.
it's a lot. That's why I say we need farmers to start scaling now, so that as the mill comes online, we have something to feed it. So, and the flax straw can be stored for a year or maybe a little bit plus. So if we scale next year, we might send like a sample bale to Europe so that we can get good metrics on yield in a mechanized mill, but we might also decide that we're gonna store all the rest of that instead of sending it out. And hence the need to give farmers some sort of guaranteed minimum payment, so we're gonna hold on to it until it gets to the mill. And like, again, with that, like, the cost thing for farmers, it's also like, yes, here's how much the seed costs, and here's everything that happens at the field, and here's all the overhead of the field, and then, oh, that's right, there is this profit that happens at the mill, so you do earn a profit off the crop after it leaves the farm. So yeah, it's gonna be hard. The expectation is in the first year of the mill that you would operate at about half of what you would expect to eventually be operating at. Partly because you're gonna ruin stuff that you're learning, and partly because, you're just not gonna have enough, acreage in production to feed it.
Thanks.
Okay, Martha, you have one last question? Did you?
I'll just do it all.
Okay, so, okay, I think we'll wind it up here. And have lunch, however, I would like, if y'all can answer quickly, two things. I wanna know, like, if someone out here, their interest is piqued, and they wanna know more, where can they go? And the second thing is how to continue this conversation so as it doesn't just drift off into the ether. Anybody may have this about that?
Well, so PennsylvaniaFlaxProject.com website, you can certainly reach out to us via email. We're both here and we'll be happy to share cards. You can reach out through the website. And how to continue this conversation so that it doesn't drift off into the ether, I think like, maybe after we all sort of integrate what we've all talked about, I have things I want to talk to Tony about, projects we want to do with historical research, and just maybe, get something else on the calendar.
Yeah, maybe circle back next fall or something and see where we are, and where, yeah, so, thank you, everybody. They drove down from Pennsylvania today to join us, so thank y'all for your travel. And
Thank you for having us.
Caitlin, thank you, and Amanda, thanks for.
I drove a whole 7 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, lunchtime.